I went down on my younger cousin during quarantine. I don't regret it. I live alone, so I got quite lonely several weeks into quarantine, which worked out perfectly because my younger cousin Liz, who was a freshman in college, needed a spot to stay due to school canceling from the virus. I had an empty room left where my ex-wife moved out and got divorced with me. The last time I saw Liz was about 8 years ago when she was 11. She's 19 now. I remember her as lanky and awkward. She was like a small girl growing into a spider's body, all limbs. I thought it would be awkward before she showed up, but it turns out we share a lot of common interests, so we got along easily. Movies became a nightly tradition pretty quickly. Around 6, we would each pick a movie we thought the other person might like, watch one, make dinner, and watch the other. Honestly, my favorite part of Liz being there was the help in the kitchen. It felt like I had a mini Gordon Ramsay in my house. The food was so good. I had my fair share of junk food and pre-made pizza making because my ex-wife grew up eating cereal, junk food, and frozen dinner. Dinner with Liz each night was the beginning of the end for me. I would constantly catch myself reaching out to touch her lower back like I had with a few times I did with my wife, or just staring at the back of her neck, her hair tied up while she focused on some mundane tasks like chopping up an onion and resisting the urge to gently kiss her on the shoulder. Last Monday was the first time I caught an idea that she might be interested in me. After the first movie of the night, Liz left to take a shower to wash off after a run she had taken earlier that day, while I threw together a pizza. Right after her shower, she surprised me by walking into the living room with just her towel on and asked me how the pizza was turning out. I'd like to lie to you and say that I kept my surprise hidden and acted as if there wasn't a mostly naked 19-year-old suddenly standing in front of me, but after looking her up and down, my eyes lingering on her bare shoulders, then on her small breast framed by the towel, the hem of the arguably too short for her height towel that ended just below her hips and all the long, sculpted legs that followed, each location for a few moments too long, I tripped over my eloquent reply. Good. Like a professional middle schooler. Liz just smirked, gave me a crooked smile, and walked back to the bathroom saying, "Well, it smells really good." It took me a while to regather myself after seeing so much skin, but I was able to rebuild my composure and push thoughts of certain barely covered areas into a small bowl, but sturdy cage and adjust my pants. As I was pulling the pizza out, Liz walked back into the living room, thankfully wearing more clothes, an old baggy hoodie that was one of her favorites and some dark black running shorts. She sat down on the couch and buried her nose in her phone while I finished up in the kitchen. Thankfully, it seemed, she was not too concerned with my lingering eyes, and I tried to forget the recent image of so much perfect skin. I cut us a few slices of still hot pizza, brought them out, and started up the movie thinking it was an odd prank she was pulling or just a joke that threw me off while I was small, but loud part of my mind hoped it wasn't a joke at all. Partway through the movie I noticed Liz was back on her phone off and on. At some point she stretched out on the couch, head on one arm rest and legs bent, and her feet pressed up against my leg. She kept shifting her legs trying to get comfortable until I asked, "Want to stretch them out?" and patted the tops of my legs. She just smiled at me and stretched them out, letting her feet rest on my lap. I instinctively shifted my hands out from under my blanket and started massaging her cold feet before I realized what I was doing and froze. I slowly looked over and saw her staring at me, a questioning, but not uncomfortable look on her face. I used to massage Nicole's ex-wife feet all the time like this, just instinct, sorry. And I started to desperately search for a new place for my hands. Liz spoke up for the first time since the movie started, laughing a little as she spoke. "I don't mind at all. It actually feels really nice. I went on a long run while you were at work, so you won't hear any complaints from me." And so, I kept massaging her feet, listening to her breathing, and paying almost no attention to the movie. Eventually, her feet were as warm as my hands and I started moving down her lower legs, giving her calf some attention. This elicited a light moan from Liz, and she said, "Why wouldn't Nicole leave this?" I'm sure it was louder than she expected because I saw her head shoot up and look at me to see if I reacted. I just glanced over and gave her a weak smile but didn't comment. I could feel her tense under my touch though. She felt bad for saying it. I turned the movie down a little and said without looking over, "She and I just wanted different things. I don't mean to overshare, but we both wanted kids and it turns out that I can't." We talked about adoption, but after a while I could tell she wanted her own kids. I felt like it was a sign that we should adopt and she very much didn't. We found out about a year ago and that was kind of the beginning of the end. It was pretty quiet for a while as we both just quietly watched the rest of the movie and I continued rubbing her feet and legs. The movie ended and credits were scrolling when Liz pulled her feet off my lap and sat up, stretching long arms arching above her tiled back head. Her neck incredibly exposed and amazingly bare in the low light of the mostly dark living room with her hair and her braid behind her head. She stood up, shuffled over closer to me, and sat down, our legs touching through the blanket I still had over my leg. Without looking over to me, just looking forward, she said, "I'm really glad you're letting me stay with you. It's nice being in a peaceful place for once. And I'm sorry I made you think about Nicole, I really didn't mean to." I brushed it off and told her to not worry about it. We sat in relative silence as the credits scrolled, just the music behind the credits filled the void, but it was strangely peaceful. We didn't need to fill the silence, and it was really nice just sitting with someone who clearly cared. Eventually Liz broke the silence, shifting in her seat and turning to face me directly. "Thanks for the massage." I started to turn to face her and make some lame comment, but she reached across my chest with one arm, behind my neck with the other, pulled my head gently sideways, and kissed me on the cheek. It felt really nice. Her breath on my neck as she moved closer to me, the surprise contact of just a simple touch across my chest, and her warm lips pressed against my cheek sent a cool fire running down my legs, and I could feel myself reacting. Thank God for blankets and semi-constructive jeans. She lingered for a few moments, and I could tell she was staring at me, searching for a reaction. I knew I couldn't stay there for long and make a good decision, so I gently took and moved her hands off my neck, stood up and said, "I still need shower, mind putting the pizza away?" Liz gave me a sad smile in the low light of the living room and nodded. I very pointedly did not run to the bathroom, turned the shower on cold and stripped out of my clothes. My quite average PP had relaxed a little bit from Liz's kiss, but was still resting at about half-mast, hoping for release. I jumped into the shower and turned my chest into the cold water to hopefully knock some sense into my foggy head. Despite the cold shower, thoughts of Liz kept me up for at least an hour, but I was able to get to sleep eventually. The following morning I got called into work. They needed extra help getting stuff done after some workers were off due to getting sick from COVID. I told Liz I'd be home kind of late and to not wait for me for dinner. Well, the mess up at work was worse than I expected, and I ended up getting home right after 9 p.m., stressed and ready for a shower. One quick, hot shower later, I walked into the living room to find a cup of hot tea and a plate of warm pizza sitting on the floor in front of the couch with Liz sitting on the couch behind. I thought to myself, she is such wifey material, but had to remind myself this is my cousin. She pointed at the ground in front of her and said, "It's payback time." She made a massaging motion with her hands. She has some freakishly strong hands, so when she started working my shoulders and neck I couldn't think of anything except the exact moment we were in. Liz found the perfect place between pleasure and pain, and there were moments where I was about to wince away from the pressure to let her know that it was a bit too much, but she seemed to know, backing off just enough to ride that line. I thought the what felt like hours-long massage was over, but she tilted my head back onto her knees and started massaging my forehead gently, moving down to my temples and running her fingers through my beard. Guys, it was heaven on earth. My eyes were closed, so I didn't see her kiss until she pressed her lips against my forehead and lingered for just a few moments. She leaned down close to my ear and whispered, "Now I think you owe me, right?" I tilted my head to the side and kissed the inside of her hand. "Yeah, I guess I do." I watched her ass bounce just a bit in her running shorts as she walked down the hall towards her bedroom. I thought about Liz in a new light. I knew she was into me and started to play